what better place to start than Lambeau Field than Thursday Night Football? And I bring up the field goal team for a very obvious reason. I think years from now, that's what we're going to remember when we think about this Detroit Lions 34-20 win against their rival, the Green Bay Packers. We're going to think like, oh, that was the game where Quay Walker jumped over the line and incurred the penalty that cost the Packers the shot at this comeback. If you weren't watching Thursday night, or even if you just want to relive the craziness of it all, it looks like the Packers are on the verge of a rally. They've cut the score to 27-17 after getting bludgeoned throughout the first half. This looks like a very classic Lions scenario where the Packers come back to break their hearts. The Lions line up to kick a field goal that would have made it a 30-17 game, 8 minutes to play, all the time in the world for Jordan Love to build his legend. And then Quay Walker jumps over the line. The Lions keep the ball. They move it half the distance to the goal. Few plays later, Detroit punches it in, and it's 34-17 instead. Okay, I just talked a lot about this because I do think it is something that will stick in the mind. This is the second time Quay Walker has run afoul of the referees in a Packers-Lions game. Last year, he got tossed for shoving a trainer. So clearly, this is something that people will remember. But having said all of that, having talked about this entire situation, that's not what you should remember when we think about this game. If anything, when you think back on this, and I don't know where the Lions season is going for sure, but when you think about this, the story should be about a Dan Campbell Lions team that absolutely looks like the group that he envisioned when he took the job. Like, we got so much oxygen, so much talking out of Dan Campbell saying, we're going to bite your kneecaps off. And damn if a few years later, this team isn't exactly that. Detroit Lions go up to Lambeau Field, which has just been a nightmare for them for all of recent history. They win this game by 2 touchdowns. With the last 2 wins at the end of last season and early in this season, they're only 15-36-3 all time at Lambeau Field. And I believe this is just their 5th win at Lambeau in the last 30 years. They play there every year, y'all. Going to Lambeau Field has been like you just chalk it up as a loss from the minute the schedule's announced every year. That's what it's like to be a Detroit Lions fan. And this team went up there and they really dictated this game from beginning to end. Yeah, the Packers made it a little bit scarier than they might have, because this was a 27-3 beatdown at halftime. 280 yards of offense for the Lions to 21 for Green Bay. Jordan Love looked completely lost. Jared Goff looked fantastic. All of the guys we've gotten used to contributing for the Lions, whether it's Sam Laporta, whether it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, whether it's David Montgomery doing his thing, this offensive line making everybody look great. Sure, the Packers rally, but the point is that this isn't the same old Lions because they put their foot back down on the gas as soon as it got dicey. I don't know if we see that from previous iterations of the Lions team. Remember, as hot as this team got last year, they were way under 500 at the midpoint of the season. And all that talk throughout the offseason about how can you follow it up. What they've done so far, they've gone on the road to beat the defending champion Chiefs, and they've gone to Lambeau Field where they never win and won a 2nd consecutive game there. Actually, I think a 3rd and a 4th consecutive game against the Packers. Not calling the Packers world beaters. Clearly, this is a young team that's got a lot to learn. Packers looked completely lost for the first 30 minutes of this game. But it matters. It matters for the Detroit Lions to do something like this, regardless of how good the Packers are. And especially, I loved the way that they wrapped this thing up. Again, the Packers cut it to a 10-point game with a lot of time to play. The Lions could have folded. A less veteran, a less savvy, a less bold team could have turned this into a much scarier affair. The Lions get the ball back immediately after the Packers make it a 10-point game. They go 14 plays, 75 yards. They take 9 minutes off the clock. So not only do they score, but they eliminate the time element that's going to make this thing dicey. Jared Goff goes 3 for 3 for 40 yards on the drive. Then after the Quay Walker penalty, they pound it down to the goal line. It goes to 4th and goal. And again, we talk so much about, oh, the Lions are aggressive. They're so bold. They'll go for it on 4th down. And sure enough, they do. Because at that point, a field goal still only puts them up 2 scores. And Dan Campbell says, nah, give it to David Montgomery one more time. Get him a 3rd tutty on the night. And they put this thing away by going up 3 scores. They wind up winning by 14. But from that point, Montgomery scores that touchdown with 6 minutes to play in the game. And from that point, that's basically all she wrote. I thought it was so impressive to kick ass the way that they did, because the first half was about as lopsided as you've ever seen a Packer game at Lambeau Field. Whether Aaron Rodgers was there or not, very few of us have seen anything like it in the last 30 plus years. Very rarely. They move the ball at will. The offense looks amazing. The defense is feisty when it needs to. This is a 2nd consecutive game that the Lions pass rush has looked awesome. And yes, the Packers offensive line incredibly compromised by injury. They find out today that David Bakhtiari is going on injured reserve. He might not be back this season. So yes, this is a Packers team with a lot of problems. But even Packers teams with problems have typically been able to count on beating the Detroit Lions. That's clearly not the case in Detroit this year. We'll see how far they can carry it. But man, I think it's impressive the way that this team scraps and lives up to that ethos that Dan Campbell has been trying so hard to instill. They get a convincing win at Lambeau Field, an impressive win at Lambeau Field. And I'm just impressed, Lions fans. So don't let the goofiness of the Quay Walker penalty take anything away from you. This was as far as the Detroit Lions go, even if the Packers don't win another game, this was a meaningful win at Lambeau Field. I thought it was awesome. Good on you, Lions.